Mike Overend from the Okanagan Thompson Tourism Association. He'll introduce himself and speak about the organization and get into some details regarding the project, answer some questions. And, so welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Yeah.
Grade 473.
Woohoo! Yeah. So this is a fourth year class.
Yes.
Nice. Okay, yeah, so my name is Mike and I work with the Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association. I'm going to start off with a quick video, but I want to do a bit of a lead up. So the Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association is a regional tourism marketing and management company. So we work under Destination BC, which is a provincial body. And there's a bunch of different regions in BC, so northern BC, Vancouver Island, we're the Thompson Okanagan. So it's basically from Valemount up in the Rockies down to Osoyoos. That's kind of the area. And then last year, we went through a process with a company based out of Spain called the Responsible Tourism Institute. And they have an accreditation program called Biosphere. And so basically we answered a whole bunch of questions about the sustainability in the region. And we were certified as a biosphere destination. So that was a pretty big deal. The Thompson Okanagan as a region is certified as a biosphere destination, which means that we take sustainability very seriously. So I'm going to show you this video, and they're going to say designation a lot in it, so that's why I gave you kind of a lead up to that. And then I'll get into what we do. So here we go.
Biosphere is a designation that really showcases that we are a destination that really respects our value systems, our culture, our environment for future generations. We want to ensure that the experiences that we have here now will continue to be here for future generations.
So it's a wonderful place to be a model to the world of man and nature. And that's what we stand for. It gives back to nature. That's the beauty. It gives back. All the animals are flourishing, the plants, even the insects, everything is flourishing.
Well, certainly sustainability, if we think about it from a green perspective, we're all really familiar with that. But we need to be considering sustainability from the perspective of what does it mean culturally? How do we preserve what we have from an Aboriginal cultural perspective, for instance? How do we engage and share the richness of those cultures with the world?
The world wants to live and experience authentic experiences, places where it's sustainable, places where they do it right. And to have this kind of designation is going to help the Thompson Okanagan region, and it's going to particularly help the Indigenous communities and their experiences.
I think the biosphere concept is a great one when you look at cultural preservation and the impact that it's going to have for Aboriginal people to connect with their culture and wanting to preserve their culture and wanting to preserve the authenticity of that culture.
Biosphere accreditation is just validation of this principle and ethos and philosophy that the First Nation people have been living all their lives.
It gives the people that travel the world that come here get to see who we are from the inside, not from the outside. And it's no longer a show, it's the authenticity of who we are and how we live and maintain ourselves that walk this earth.
It provides this basis of planning for the destination to ensure that all levels of government, all associations within the region, whether it be our Interior Health Authority, whether it be our water quality societies that are managed the area, poverty organizations and women's equality organizations, they're all working together with the people involved in overseeing the environmental protection agencies to plan the destination.
Sustainability is built into all our key messaging under development, stakeholder relations, feasibility, financial, collaborative relationships within our community, our city, all our stakeholders.
It's an example for other destinations across Canada and around the world to have an industry-led movement that has the opportunity to engage businesses, to engage government, to engage other stakeholders across the board in moving the needle on sustainability in our region. And I think that has a ripple effect that will impact other destinations around the globe.
It shows that we do care. We're one step ahead of many other destinations to say, we care about what happens today and in the future for future generations, not only for our industry, but for the people who live and work in our community.
I think it's a great example to other regions, and as Tourism Vancouver Island, I'm certainly really interested to learn about that process and see key learnings and opportunities for us on Vancouver Island to not reinvent the wheel and to learn from the work that you guys have been doing.
And sometimes these early adopters or leadership opportunities and pilots are just the stimulus that it needs to raise the multiple boats, I guess, or raise the tide for everybody around us.
It makes me proud to be part of this industry. It makes me proud of who I am as an Indigenous person, to be part of promoting our communities and our culture in ways that I just couldn't have imagined even 10, 11 years ago. It's truly inspiring.
We will be the first region in North America to have this designation. I think it does a couple of things. It brings a spotlight onto our region, but I think even more importantly, from someone who cares deeply about sustainability, this region is providing leadership to other tourism destinations across North America and around the world.
For me, I really think that this designation is a reminder. It's a reminder that we're a part of this world. We're not separate from it in any way. It makes me feel so hopeful. It's amazing, actually.
So yeah, I wanted to show you that to kind of give you an idea of our direction as an organization. It's about sustainability. And the project that you guys are going to be working on ties in all those elements of, natural environment, Indigenous culture, and that kind of stuff. So that was that video. Probably about 1 minute too long, but...
May I ask one question?
Yeah, absolutely.
I noticed Colville Confederated Tribes came up there.
Yeah.
Is that somebody we're going to be working in conjunction with?
No, not for this project, I don't think, yes.
Thank you, that's good.
Fair enough. Okay, let's see. So I'll give you guys kind of an overview of what we do. So we're the Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association, as I said. You guys are working on what we're calling the Community Spaces Project, or the Discovery Rest Areas, and I'll get more into that as I go through. But so who are we? We are a not-for-profit organization. We have a board of directors. We are one of 5 regional tourism organizations in BC under Destination BC. So that's kind of an overview of our organization. We basically market and manage industry development within the Thompson Okanagan for tourism. So, as I mentioned before as well, we represent that area. So on the map, you can see all the different regions. This is us right here. It's a pretty big area. The way we like to describe it is we're about the size of Ireland from a geography perspective. So that's kind of cool. It's pretty big. We have over 90 communities and what we call hamlets, I guess. So they're not incorporated communities. And then 33 First Nation communities in the area. And then it says there at the bottom, obviously it's a strong agricultural area. Up in the north sections, though, it's very forested and a beautiful kind of mountainous area like that. So our mission is to stimulate ongoing sustainable growth in the value of tourism through innovative leadership and promoting unique experiences and inspiring creative collaboration. So I wanted to throw that up there for you guys to see. It's kind of our motto. So yeah, tourism, I think for some people, they don't really understand the value of tourism. It's kind of gets put to the side as far as industry goes. So, forestry's up there, mining's up there, agriculture's up there. However, tourism actually is the biggest economic sector in the Thompson Okanagan. For BC, it brings in 15.7 billion total revenue on an annual basis. Over 18,000 businesses. 127,000 jobs. So it's a fairly large BC industry, BC particularly because it's such a beautiful place to be. The Thompson Okanagan, it's our primary economic driver, as I mentioned. And then you can see the numbers there. So 35,000 plus direct jobs, 2 billion in visitor economy every single year, and then 4 million plus visitors that come into our area. So it's a huge industry in the Thompson Okanagan, and part of our job as an organization is to elevate that and bring attention to the fact that tourism is quite a big sector and quite an important sector. So this here kind of describes how our organization works, the Thompson Okanagan Sustainability Destination Wheel, I guess. We recently created this to kind of describe our direction. Everything is run through our regional development strategy. We do region-specific projects. The Community Spaces Project is one of those region-specific projects. We're all about partnerships, which I'll describe as well. We received the certification, which the video was kind of about there, We work with TELUS actually on research and big data, so we're learning about who's coming into our area and what they're doing in the area, where they're coming from, and all that kind of stuff. And then internal practices is just, we've kind of changed our focus. I'll talk about a few of these things, but not all of them. Okay, so regional development strategy. In 2012, we completed a 10-year regional tourism strategy called Embracing Our Potential. It was a 18-month process. We talked to over 1,800 stakeholders throughout the process. And by the end of it, we were endorsed by all the 90 communities and 33 First Nation communities, which was a pretty big deal. It was the first kind of strategy from a regional perspective of its kind in Canada. And since then, that's basically driven all of our, everything that we've done is coming from this strategy. So it really gave us that guiding light to move forward. The next one. So I won't kind of describe this whole graph here, but within this, you can see regional strategy and action plans. Some of that was the Rail Trails experiences, which we're going to talk about today with your guys' project. But underneath all of this, the one thing that was really important was the Charter for Sustainability. When they did the plan back in 2012, they talked to all the different communities, and every single community basically stated, we don't want tourism for the sake of tourism. It has to be sustainable, and that really came up from everybody. You know, over in Christina Lake, they didn't want people throwing beer bottles in the lake. They wanted it to be about, you know, a responsible, sustainable tourism destination, bringing in good tourists, you know, or people that respect the environment so that they can bring in money, but it's not kind of ruining where they live. So that was a really big focus of that strategy. So from there, we kind of said, okay, let's take the sustainability framework and move forward. So we committed to a Charter of Sustainability. That basically went into us, you know, doing a memorandum of understanding with a local company called Green Step Solutions. We did a couple regional video projects to get businesses on board with sustainability. However, in the end, it kind of refined into being part of this designation that we talked about and working with the Responsible Tourism Institute to get that biosphere designation. And that really drives us forward as a organization and as a region for what we do. And as it mentions here, sustainability for us is more than just environmental. It's about the economic impact, it's about the social and cultural impact, and it's about the environment, obviously, as well. And that comes from local, and it comes from consumers. So if the local people within the communities don't like it, then it's not sustainable. And if the consumer is not acting in a certain way, it's not sustainable either. So it comes from both of those, all those components. Okay, so certification. As I mentioned, we were recently certified as a biosphere designation. We were the first destination in the Americas, so not just North America, to receive the Sustainable Tourism designation. Essentially, the Responsible Tourism Institute is a company run out of Spain, but they work with the United Nations World Tourism Organization and also the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, who are pretty much the top dogs in tourism growth. And that's where this biosphere designation came from. So I think there's about 21 regions or communities worldwide that have the biosphere designation, and a lot more are starting to get on board. So it's been going on for about, I think, 10 plus years now, and we were the first in the Americas to get it. We had to answer 137 questions that had to do with all different types of, you know, economic growth, environmental practices, gender equality, all that kind of stuff in order for us to get certified. And then, oh wow, that's not good. And at one point, an on-site auditor came to our area to actually look at what we were doing to make sure that we weren't just making it all up. And then we got certified in November 2017. So partnerships, I wanted to add this because a big part of what we're going to be doing with you guys is partnerships. So for example, we're working with you, so UBCO and Thompson Okanagan are part of a partnership. Yeah, partnerships are basically a fundamental approach for sustainable growth. If we don't work together, it'll be hard for us as an industry to move forward. And then one of our mottos with what we do is our competition is not in the room. That's with their kind of business base, so that when they look at their neighbors that are also running a business, it's not about competing against each other. It's more about it's out in the international world. That's our competition. However, here we go. So we work with you guys. We do capstone programs as well with UBCO. And now we're working with Nancy and Miles and a few others on this project. The Okanagan Collaborative Conservation Program, we work closely with them, and I can see you guys getting some information from them in regards to natural history and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely can see us getting maybe Scott to come in and talk to you guys. Indigenous Tourism British Columbia, we have a regional tourism or Indigenous tourism specialist at our office named Greg Hopf. I think next week you guys probably will get to meet him. He's fantastic. His job basically from the start, he started about 2 years ago, and it was for him to come into the region and go and sit down with each First Nations community and just talk to them and say, what are your guys' aspirations with tourism? Like, are you guys there? Do you want to have tourism? And if some communities said, we absolutely want to grow more. Some communities were already doing a lot. Some communities said, you know what, that's not really our focus right now. But it was really establishing that, baseline relationship so that we could grow together. And he's done a phenomenal job in that regard. And if you need any information on the Indigenous component of this project, Greg is certainly the best resource for that. As he can connect you with anybody in the different communities as well. And then Access BC, we work with Spinal Cord Injury BC, and we jointly founded Access BC. And we actually have an employee in our office, Sonia, and she's our accessibility specialist. So I think a big part of this project also will be kind of about universal accessibility. So visual, audio or audible, kind of moving around the space. And she will be a massive resource for you guys to talk to in regards to actually designing the community spaces stuff. So those are kind of the partners that I see us working with a lot. Research and big data, I threw this in here because a few years ago we worked with TELUS. It was our pilot project actually, and they do TELUS Insight. So basically they get big data. Sorry, when it reformats when I get it, it's really quite annoying. They do big data, so basically they take from cell phone towers all people's information, and so they pretty much know everything about us, which is just kind of the way it is now. Essentially what that does for us is that we can say, we ask them to do a study on the KVR Trail, the Kettle Valley Rail Trail, which you guys are working on this project, and to look at who's actually using it. So a few years ago, what we would do is we'd have summer students go out there in the summertime between end of June or early June to end of August. And they'd go from 9 till 5 and they'd click their little thing when somebody went by and they would count that way. And we kind of had this 80,000 to 100,000 range of people that are coming and visiting the trail during that summer season. So we work with TELUS, and they did a study in 2016 between the months of April and November. And they found that there was actually around 300,000 people that were using the trail. And actually the busiest months were September and October because it's actually a bit cooler. It's a bit prettier than the summertime when it's really hot and hard to move around. So that was really eye-opening for us. It not only told us where people were coming from, but it told us how many people were coming, how they were using it, whether they were walking or biking, and that it was a larger number than we anticipated, and also when they were coming. So we have that research, and I can show you guys that at any point. It basically is just numbers, but it really provides a good idea of how many people are using that trail and how many people are going to actually see these community spaces, rest areas that you guys are going to work on. So region-specific projects. So this is kind of what we're getting to here. We do a lot of different projects. As you can see, this is just a few of the things that we do. However, the big thing that we're going to talk about is the regional rail trails, which I've been working on for the last few years. In 2016, we completed another study. That's what we do at our, we do a lot of studies at our organization. It was a 5-year regional rail trail study. And basically we said, we have the KVR Trail. It runs from Castlegar all the way over to Hope. It's a massive network of over about 800 kilometers of trail. That used to be a railway that they pulled up the tracks for. And we said, how do we make this a world-class recreational experiences for not only locals, but for visitors from a tourism perspective? And we focus on how the development of that trail would be good for rural communities because it could really provide an economic boost to some of the smaller communities that it runs through. And it connects different communities throughout the region. So it's a regional specific project. So we did the 5-year strategy. We had some recommendations that came out of that. From that, we realized that in order for us to actually complete the recommendations, we needed to get some money. So we applied for a, here, let me sec here, let me go back. I'll go back. So we applied for a grant in October 2007. We received $500,000 from the provincial government on the rural dividend grant. And part of that grant application was building new infrastructure. So a lot of it was marketing, a lot of it was different studies as well, a lot of it was working with TELUS to find out the baseline of people that are using the area. But a big portion of that money is going to go towards infrastructure. So that's where you guys come in. As you can see here, those are some of the older things that we have on the trail. They're not overly inspiring. Benches are great. This is really an older kind of informational thing. Here are some kiosks here. So we definitely have infrastructure on the trail, but we definitely want to increase the kind of informational, I can't think of the word, but interpretive element of the actual kiosk. So that's an example of what they used to look like. And I think the overall focus of this project is to enhance the story along the trail with rest areas. So we want to talk about rail history, Indigenous tradition and culture, kind of the geography, and then the natural environment itself. But I'm going to back up a little bit because I got ahead of myself. Oh, can I go back? Yeah, okay. So what you guys are working on with us is the Rail Trails Community Spaces Initiative, and basically creating 2 rest areas. Rest areas can be a lot more than just a bench. It can be a lot more than just a kiosk. The way that we've envisioned it is it's kind of an area where people can stop, they can sit down, they can have lunch. It might be an area where there's a viewpoint. They can learn about the area. It's really kind of an all-encompassing component to the trail, so that when they use it, it really gives them that historical feeling, but also the future and all those things combined through, audio, visual, and all that kind of stuff. That's where you guys' creativity is going to come in. I'll show you a map of the trail. This is not the best map, but you can go online. We have a website called bcrailtrails.com where you can find out more information about this map. So this is the entire network, basically. It starts in Castlegar, and it runs all the way down to Christina Lake, over to Midway, which is down by the border. Comes all the way up to Kelowna, and then Myra Canyon's just in this area here. And then it comes back down. Eventually it goes to Princeton and over to Hope. So it's a massive network. It also has a southern spur that runs from Penticton down to Osoyoos. However, the area that we're going to be working on is basically from Myra to Naramata, and most likely in the Chute Lake to Naramata area. So that's kind of what we're thinking. It's a fairly large network. From Myra to Naramata, it's about 70 or so kilometers. The area that we're going to be working on is going to be a bit more focused, and we need to figure out kind of the spatiality of where these rest areas are going to be. That's kind of an exciting part, I think. We can really get to choose where we want to put this, and we also need to be, the province needs to accept that, but they've been really good with working with us. So that's kind of the scope of the map itself. And then, oh, I got too far ahead of myself again. Oh. Okay, so Indigenous. So as I mentioned, these are 2 different rest areas we're going to work on. We really want to tie in different components. So the Indigenous Partnerships is a big part of it. We realized from the very beginning of working on the rail trails that if we wanted to elevate this product for tourists, but also for locals, we really needed to tell the story of how these trails have been utilized for, quite honestly, centuries and even millennia. The KVR itself hasn't been used for that long because it was only built back in 1915. However, these corridors that they used to build the KVR were used by Indigenous culture for a very, very long time. So we feel in order to really bring that spiritual element to the trail, which if you've ever been to the trail, it actually has a very amazing feel to it, Myra Canyon particularly. We really wanted to weave the story of people that were here originally, and that's where the Indigenous Partnerships come into place. As I mentioned, Greg Hoff is a great resource for that information, which you'll be able to have the chance to meet him. West Bank First Nation, they are a great resource as well, and Jordan Cobble. And then in Penticton, which is kind of near the area that we're going to be for this project, The Enoquin Center is with the Penticton Indian Band, and they have a huge amount of resources in kind of the culture and the history of the area. So that's a huge component of this project, which you guys, I'm sure, have talked about. Another component is the railway history. Oops. I think I have to press it like 3 times to get back. Okay. So, railway history. So here's kind of cool, actually. This is an old railway relic, I guess you can call it, or artifact. There was a business near where we're going to be called Shoot Lake Lodge. It's a little lake. It has a little lodge there. And they have a whole bunch of old artifacts that they basically aren't using, and they pretty much told us that they would donate us the stuff if we wanted to utilize it. So what I'm thinking is if we get the chance, maybe when we go out to the field, we can actually go up to this lodge and we can see some of the artifacts and see how we can tie that railway history into the actual space itself. That's a pretty cool example. That would be something that we would have to really, get a machine to move, but if it fit, then we might be able to put that in there. Another component is there are rock ovens along the section of the trail, and just really tying that story of how the railway was built, why it was built, what that meant to the area at the time, and how it kind of permeates into the future. A lot of people that we know that utilize the trail really love the railway history component of that. So yeah, we can talk to the Shoot Lake Lodge people, and we can also probably get a few local historians that know a bit more about the actual railway history. There's a bunch of books on it too that we can discuss as well, but that's another component. And then design. So I know that you guys might not necessarily be the kiosk design, but there are provincial standards for what we can actually do with kiosks. The province works with us closely, Rec Sites and Trails BC, and they're really, really quite good with what we can do. That being said, we have to kind of follow a certain design element. These are just a few examples of some of the kiosks. There's a lot more examples. However, what is put on the actual kiosks and what is put within the area itself can be completely creative. So that's where you guys kind of come in and you kind of tell the story of, how you want to combine those things, how you want the space to actually to look, and how you want to tell that story. So that's pretty exciting. I will be able to share more about the actual design and stuff, I guess later on. But you guys' focus will really be on telling that story through the rest area itself. And then also, even though we can't really change around how the kiosks are built, we can design the benches however we want to design them. So I don't know if that's your guys' class or if that's the other guys' class, but yeah, absolutely. So you guys can brainstorm how that looks. What else do I got? So that's kind of, I don't know why I threw that on there. I got this off the internet, but pretty much just saying you can get creative with it, right? So, yeah. Anyways, this is our current website that we just created. We have the bcrailtrails.com website, and we also have the thompsonokanagan.com website. This one kind of tells a story of sustainability that we're really focused on. You guys can check out this website. You can check out the bcrailtrails.com website to kind of get a bit more information. As far as finding information on the KVR online, it's not the easiest place to find it, so I would suggest checking out a few books at the library, which I can provide a book list for that as well, which I'm sure is part of your book list too a little bit. However, if you go online to this website, you can kind of learn more about our organization and what we're doing and how that ties into this project as well. So that's kind of the presentation, but I hope that you guys have some questions so I can really clarify the goals moving forward. Yeah.
I just want to actually back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because part of the reason that I was asking about the CCF earlier is that a lot of the time, my background is anthropology.
Okay.
A lot of the times these initiatives kind of tend to have a tendency to miss some of the nuances and divisions within the Indigenous community.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you're mentioning that this trail goes from Castlegar to Hope, which means that you would have been going through Sinixt territory. Specifically, my issue with the CCF is that in terms of Sinixt territory, they act very much like a colonizer and less like an Indigenous group. So I'm kind of curious, when you say you consult with all Indigenous communities in the region, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
And Greg might be able to answer that for me better.
I think Greg would definitely answer that better, but I'll give you kind of essentially, 33 communities is a lot of communities. He tries to get to as many as he can and try to establish a relationship. And one thing that he's told us from the very beginning is, like, some of these communities don't even get along with each other.
Oh, yeah.
So you need to really be aware that they're all at different places. That being said, this project specifically is very specific to a certain area. So that's why we probably will only work with PIB.
I guess the easiest way for me to try and better qualify my question is when he says he works with all Indigenous communities in the region, is he talking specifically about ones that are recognized by the government, or do they go out of way to make contact with ones that have been, for example, declared extinct?
He probably just recognized by government. Yeah, that's something that Greg can answer. He's phenomenal. He understands the area very well, but that's a great question too. Anybody else have some questions? Do you guys kind of have an understanding of what this project is about?
Just introduced to it an hour ago.
Yeah, okay.
Processing.
Yeah, so basically it's, the Kettle Valley Rail Trail. I don't, who's here has been to Myra Canyon up in, yeah, okay. So you can see that they have kiosks there. It's actually a better developed part of the trail than anywhere else in the trail. And the goal is to kind of get different sections of the trail up to that standard. And this is a creative way to do that. I think with this project, this is the first time that we're doing anything like this. We received that money and we wanted to work with the community to do it and with the educational institutions. Once we do this and we see how it works, the goal for us is to take this kind of idea and implement it in other places too. So the Okanagan Rail Trail, for example, they have a beautiful trail system, but they don't really have any signage yet. So we could take this to their board or their committee and say, look what we've done with the university. They've created this amazing space. Now can we bring this to the Okanagan Rail Trail as well, right? So we chose the KVR because the KVR is what we've been working on for a long time, but it's just the beginning of really extending that story throughout the rail trails in the Okanagan. So, yeah. Questions? Yeah, for sure.
So just in terms of like the goal,
yeah,
for like signage and such like that, what's kind of like the main overarching theme, would you say? Because we've kind of got like the history of the rail trail, the use by the Indigenous communities, like current use, but then we also kind of want to incorporate technology. So is there kind of like something that overarches all of that we can kind of look at? Or?
That's a good question. I think it's about, I guess the way I would describe it is about the user's journey, I guess, so their experience. So if they're going into the area, how do they want to travel through this trail, essentially? So the cool thing about a trail is that it's, point A to point B or anywhere in between. So they're actually going on a journey a little bit. So we want to kind of take them along this journey so that when they get to this area, they might be tired, but they sit down and they want to learn about, having a map's probably important to some extent. We don't have to have a map, but kind of give them a perspective of what the area is like. This is where you are. And then kind of tell them this is an area that used to be, we might choose a specific area that has ties to a spot where they camped out when they built the railway, right? So just kind of incorporating that story into where we choose to put the rest area, and then also tying in the ecological elements. So you might say this is a popular area for this type of pine tree. Just basically telling the story of what that area means and what that trail meant to that area. So, and the cool thing about the Indigenous side too is that extends the story way back. It's not just the last 100 or 200 years. It's a lot further than that. But it's about digging deeper. So yeah, that's a really good question, and I think it's hard to get that focus. And I've been working on this for 2 years now, so it's easier for me to understand. But it's just about think about it from the user's journey experience, I guess. So they're coming in. How do they see it? How do they move from the next area, from this area? And what do they want to learn about, essentially? Like, what would you want to learn about, and kind of tie that in, right? So I hope that kind of gives you a better idea of what you were thinking. And then as this project goes along, you can always ask me questions, or Nancy can ask me questions, and we can kind of, I think the point of it is to really get you guys to give us ideas too, right? So That's a big part of it too, yeah. And then you had a question back there.
Yes, I was thinking about the users. It's such a, you know, if I think of who uses this trail, it's probably all ages, right, all backgrounds.
Yeah.
And probably also disabled people use it, and very active people. So we have to take that probably into consideration. But what they all have in common is probably they are tourists. So there are people who have some money to go on vacation. So it will be probably not very poor people, or I don't know. Is there any thought of who we are addressing this to?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a combination of local residents. A lot of local residents use the trail, and a combination of tourists. So if we're going to get into like demographics, yeah, it's most likely people that, you know, I could probably give you the study, but fairly affluent people, I suppose, would use this trail. But it's really more about just kind of telling the story to anybody who utilizes it. However, yeah, I'd say it's a healthy combination of local people and then tourists. And then tourists that come from all over the world to cycle the trail. People that come from Vancouver to cycle the trail, Calgary to cycle the trail. So people come from all over the world really to utilize this trail. That being said, there's a lot more than just cycling that happens on this trail, which we can get into. This is going to tie into where we actually choose to put these community rest areas, because some sections of this trail actually allow motorized traffic. So we have to figure out if we want it to be in an area where, you know, anybody can access this with, you know, an ATV or whatever, or if we want to put it somewhere where it's only accessible to people on bicycles or walking, right? So that's something else that we can talk about. It varies in the different sections of the trail. But yeah, it's a wide variety of users that utilize the trail for sure. Yes.
Mike, I wonder, is it, you know, I think it would be really helpful for us in some ways if we had a really good sense of the locations.
Yeah.
Right, of the actual sites, because I think it's, just from what you've been saying, it sounds like there's so much diversity and possibility of where the site's going to be.
Yeah.
Like even if
well,
we had a sense of like 4 different possible sites or something like that, and then we could begin planning around like selecting 2 of them or something,
yeah,
talking about how those might interact.
Absolutely, and quite honestly, I've left it open to this point because I didn't know if that was something that we would choose together, but certainly I could provide.
You maybe show on when we go on the field trip if there was 4.
Yeah, that's what we would do for sure. So what I could do is I could send you guys a map, which would be a Google map, so you can just zoom in to the spot. And I'll basically put like a little star or a little dot beside areas that would make the most sense. I'll kind of give you the scope of the actual trail itself. And I'll say this area, this area, this area, this area, and then when we go out to the field, we'll go and actually see those areas, and then you guys can say, you know, this makes the most sense. Because that would be nearing towards the end of September, I suppose, right? So I can definitely send you guys a map that really gives you a sense of these are the, you know, potential spots. And it won't be very many. I'll make sure it's, you know, no more than 5 or 4 kind of thing. So you can really understand how that would look. The thing about a map is that you can't get, you know, super close. You can get kind of close. So you won't really be able to tell what the area will be like when on the ground, but you'll at least know to some extent where it will be. So yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Anything else?
We also were talking a bit about the field trip going down for the trip, and we were planning the 28th.
Yeah, I think that would make the most sense. Yeah, so we'll help you guys. We'll arrange some type of bus, shuttle, or whatever, and we'll go down to the area, and we'll check it out. It'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, we'll do that. 28th works for us, so if it works for you guys, it's good as well. That'll be a long day, though. Hopefully you guys are prepared for that. Pardon?
Bring good walking shoes.
Bring my hiking shoes.
There you go, exactly. Yeah, so we can definitely nail down the locations better so you guys have a better kind of grasp on that. But the idea really was to work with the classes to figure it out. However, we certainly need to nail it down to a specific area. So, yeah.
Did you talk to Miles's class about whether they could attend the field trip with us?
Yeah, I did, and I said it'd be good if you guys could attend. He said I would like that, but he has to just figure it out, I guess. So, so I'll send you guys an email, and then we can talk about if that works for him on the 28th. Yeah, exactly, and the amount of people and all that kind of stuff too. And then who was the other fellow that we were working with on this project?
That was Myron. He's
Yeah.
going to provide some design work
Okay.
for support for the actual proposal
Yeah.
to give to you.
Okay.
But I don't know that that will actually translate
Yeah,
into
fair enough.
design.
Cool.
Stuff for the actual
Right on. Yeah. That being said, this was just kind of an introduction. Over the next couple months, I'm certainly here to support this project. Greg can be there for you guys as well. And then if you have any specific questions that relate to certain areas that I might not know, I can certainly connect you guys to different people that might know about it as well. So see TOTA as the kind of a catalyst for providing information, and we'll work with you guys on this project. I hope it's not, too daunting of a project, but it's pretty exciting from our perspective. So yeah.
It's pretty daunting.
Yeah, well, 2 areas, and then, and the cool thing is that we do have examples of what it used to look like, so, it'll look better than that, so I promise you. Anyways, yeah, there you go. Any more questions? If not, I can certainly be on email for any of you guys when you need.
Just how do I try and get a hold of Greg as quickly as I can?
Greg? Yeah, I'll send Nancy his email, and then you can send it out to class. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
And he will be here next week.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, Greg's great. Okay. Anything else?
I mean, that's the only part of it that's really daunting to me at all.
Yeah, and I understand
And I
that
think
for sure.
It would be good to talk to him about our questions about, our position as, introducing travelers to Indigenous history, and culture. I mean, that puts us in a difficult position, I think. And it'll be really good to talk to Greg.
Definitely.
About that.
Well, just as an anthropology major, there are certain ethical mandates that I absolutely have to pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think also too, it's you don't necessarily have to figure out what is going to be told, but maybe how it will be told, or figure out that kind of thing, so that when it's actually, because when it comes to working with the First Nations communities or the Indigenous communities, we know that it definitely takes time, and we have to build that up. And Greg's been building that for a couple of years now, so he'll be a big part of this story as well. But yeah, I totally understand that part of it as well,
Or
for sure.
possibly we could think about it as ways to make room for
Exactly.
ways to make room for Indigenous stories.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's one way to think about it.
Absolutely.
As good a wording as any, for sure.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, you guys. Yeah, we'll come in next week with Greg, and we can, hopefully have some more questions at that point. But yeah, cool. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for coming, and we'll use you as a resource, and if we need you, we'll drag you back.
Yeah, definitely. Right on. Thanks, guys. Yeah.